Hello, guys. Thank you so much for joining this episode of the Enneagram and Marriage Pod. I am so happy we get to talk about type sevens today and sevens with every type in relationship. Thank you so much for pressing play, tuning in, learning about this wild type a little bit. Also, can be very serious and focused type. We'll learn about both sides of the seven and so much more as we embark on this journey today through all the nine types and including all the 45 pairings within the types. Thankfully, today we're just going through those with sevens. And I hope you can go back to our 8 episode, our 9 episode. I was seriously impressed, actually, guys, with a teen. If you're listening, Alana, I am so glad that my friend Alana, one of the girls I've mentored for years, who just earned herself a full ride to college, said, I loved learning about the 8 episode because I am learning about how to be as healthy as possible in my relationship. So, kudos to the young fans out there. And whatever age you are, I'm just so happy you're learning with me about 9, 8, 7. Next week, we'll do 6, onward, and so forth. And wherever you're at right now, whether summer, winter, fall, spring, I'm so happy you're here. So, once again, thank you for choosing this time. If you have veered off, come on back to me. We are going to have this short but very full episode on type sevens today. And just before I get there, reminder, we're having a summer fun. So that means our courses are on sale and use the code summer fun to get 50% off this week only. So I hope you enjoy if you are right here with me. I know my kids put away their school books and pens, largely Melodies, almost there. And now I get to pull mine out. So I've been learning like crazy and I'm so happy to share this journey with you. So again, summer fun at Enneagram and Marriage. And I'm so grateful. It's all in the show notes. Now, talking about type sevens with you has a lot of components. Like I said, the wild, frenetic, moving a lot of plates sort of vibe of a seven. If you know the seven, called the enthusiast, the epicure, sevens love experiences. They're kinetic learners. We like moving. I know today I dressed even in my seven. I was like, oh, I should put on professional attire. And I'm like, actually, I'm just going to dress. If you're watching the YouTube, like, I'm not changing. I'm going to Pure Bar after this. Like, this is the way sevens are. We move and we like to be comfortable. And that's something that took me a long time to figure out. So even when I do put on professional attire, it's very comfortable. And my clients know that. My clients know that sometimes I may or may not have makeup on. I may or may not be in professional attire. It might be more like, hey, I'm sporty today and I'm on a walk and talk with you, or we're going to have an emotional deep dive session. So I have soft lighting. I will switch and move with my clients' needs. And that's how sevens are because we like to help and adapt to the people around us to make them feel comfortable and happy. We don't want our people being disappointed. That's huge for us. We would rather be disappointed ourselves because we know how to handle our emotions, or so we think. And when I say or so we think, I do mean think, because one of the goals you might know about sevens is we want to move from thinking to feeling. Sevens are thinking types along with fives and sixes. So we're very cerebral. We love to learn. I often say, and I know many thinking types, and maybe even others of you bibliophiles out there with me would say, it's not like, what do you read? It's just all caps, read constantly, all day, everything. So if we're not doing that for our whole lives, we're probably doing something else to keep ourselves and our minds engaged. And there are so many theories, right, about why we're this way, all the way back to Hippocrates thinking about blood types and phlegmatics and cholerics and such. But what we really have come to learn, we're still learning an awful lot, is that many sevens felt like they developed into this person who has to hold a lot of plates and do a lot of things because they weren't exactly able to trust their parents for that. Or maybe they had an absent time with parents and they felt like, I love you, but I don't necessarily trust that you'll be able to hold me. So it's really hard for you if you're a seven to ask for help, but the people around you can see you stumbling. And I know my audience sees that sometimes. And yet we just go on because we know part of us needs to carry on. And that's part of our survival wiring as sevens. When we're brave, when we're healthily self soothing, sevens can sometimes accept help because sometimes you need to do your own work. And that's also part of not just examining that id part of the seven where we want to play, but saying, you know what? I am able to hold plates. I am able to do things well, and I'm going to do it. I'm also going to visit that 5 arrow, which is a place of focus, and that 1 arrow, which is a place, for those of you who know a little deeper dive on Enneagram, that 1 arrow, a place of really looking at how to have margin, looking at how to have order. And it's still pretty quick, but it's a place of doing and organizing, not just doing and experiencing. So I think it's helpful when people know there are growth and stretch places for sevens. Because if you're a young seven or young in your learning seven, you might say, oh my gosh, I just move all the time. I could never focus. I could never really stop to get organized. And I just want to empower you. Yes, you can. But you also are going to have days where you're just going to have a lot of energy and you're going to want to experience and explore and create systems. And that's okay too. Your people will also respect you if they love you. They'll be able to say, okay, I see you have high energy today. Maybe they need to set boundaries with you. And if you're a spouse, partner, friend of a seven listening, you might need to do that. You might need to say sometimes, you know what, you're moving on all cylinders, and I need to take a step back, take some time from you, and let you move without me. And that is okay. But one of my tips for you, seven, because this is all about you today, is that you also in that moment need to take a deep breath and to get clarified and to let them take that pause. Because along with threes and eights, sevens are in the assertive aggressive stance. And so sevens often want to move with people and they're often extroverted, not always, but often. And so that usually means they want to discharge some of the energy with other people in sort of a chemistry way to say, like, I'm going to share an experience with you and not doing it to one up you, but I want to relate with you. And this is how I do it through stories. And I think that we know humans love to live through stories, but sometimes humans love to live through rest or quiet. And so just knowing that as a seven, that sometimes you just need to be the listener and sometimes you just need to be the one to let your family have those boundaries with you. It will cause you to rise up in one way or another, usually frustration. And we don't go to the one space in a healthy way. Or you might say, no, it's my wings, Krista. I'm a seven and I'm near the six and the eight. And those are two reactive types. However, you're noticing you falling apart a little bit as a seven. It's okay. It's hard to slow down when you're moving really fast. So we do have to expect deep breaths will be in order. So keep that in mind when your family needs a bit of space or when they don't agree with what you want to do. And then allow yourself to come into what really will soothe you. I've talked about it a lot in this podcast, but it took me over 30 years to really let myself close my eyes. And you have heard me say why I often don't keep them shut sometimes because people will come toward me um, all over the place and just they want to be they can feel the seven energy. They're like, "Okay, this is a physics thing. This is not like weird energy. It's literally like, oh, you're smiling, you're rambunctious, you're jovial, and people feel that and they want to be a part of it." So sometimes that's why you stay up is because you know people want that from you. But when you can find a safe place, that's what I want you to do. And I want you to make sure that you allow yourself, even if it's just a 1 minute where you're counting up to 1 minute, eyes closed, that you also allow yourself some space and some rest to process. And because you're here with me right now and I've got you, I'm going to say it now. Go ahead and take a nice, deep, clarifying breath right now with me. And I'll take it with you and you'll see how much better you feel just from that. So go ahead and take a nice, deep breath for at least a couple seconds in and then out. Take a breath in and out. Oh my gosh, doesn't that feel so good? And that's something that in your busy frenetic pacing, sometimes you don't do that. And you don't remember how doing that brings you from your head into your body, into your heart, and it settles you and it soothes you. And it brings you from the state of overdoing and gluttony of have to do it all to sobriety, to a place of calm, to a place of ability to wait and to pause and to be with your people. Because most sevens like to be what's next in the future or in the past I did this, I'm thinking about it again. And so there's these little bits of rumination and just touching our feelings for a minute because they're hard to bear and then moving ahead. But being in the moment requires that deep breath regularly. And you also might regularly take walks. I know I take a mile walk in the morning and often my daughter joins me and in the evening my husband usually joins me, but it's a part of my day that allows me to settle into who I am. And you've probably heard me saying on this podcast too that I always like to walk quickly, But I've learned ever since I was a little girl with my own mom to now having a daughter who likes to move more slowly, that sometimes it's good to take those deep breaths even while you're walking with somebody so you can pace with them and allow yourself to come down. And it's also okay to say one of my self soothing pieces is that I need a quick, brisk walk because there's some things I need to digest. So I'm going to be ahead of you for a little while and then I'll come back. So know that I don't want you treading on ahead of your people for hours and hours, which you could do if you get lost in your exploring. But I do get it if sometimes you feel like, just like I've said to eights, sometimes the energy doesn't match with your people and you need to find your own route. And if you're a spouse or partner of a seven, know that they're a kinetic learner. And sometimes they really do need to find a route that's different from yours in order to bring them down. But what I might say to them instead of just like calm down or stop would be, what can we do to help ourselves to get relaxed? And then they'll probably know. And maybe at nighttime, they'll say, "Oh, give me some carbs." And you might say, "Okay, let's go out. It's Friday night." But if it's daytime and it's a weekday and you're like, "Okay, we can't just be gluttonous right now. How about we take a slow walk? How about you have a bubble bath? How about you go into that book you like?" And try to offer them tips without being controlling. Because one of the things sevens really are is, as you've gathered from this episode, a bit of a wild card. And when we look at like the different personalities and whether they have masculine or feminine energy, we all have both, right? There's guys, there's girls, but sometimes we're like, I'm in my dominant energy, or I'm in my receptive energy. And sevens tend to have a female energy that is wilder. So when you say, I'm going to make you do something, that feels very destabilizing for a seven. And as I mentioned, usually in their childhood or early experiences, there's reasons why they needed to self soothe in their own way. And so I know for me, I learned to, by the violence that I experienced from my dad, I learned to go into my own way of self soothing. My sister was a three and she needed a lot of attention. So I learned to go into the corner. I learned that my mom said she was going to kill herself if I didn't take care of her in the way that she's like, if you ever die, I will kill myself. And I was like, Mom, you don't mean that. And she's like, yes, I do. So I learned to be hyper vigilant, take care of me, and make sure that nobody ever really encapsulates me. And that's been a journey for my husband to ride with me, right? And of course, you guys have heard me say it before. My mom was mentally ill. She was amazing in many ways, but her heart of love in her 2/9 was so big. And sometimes sevens are raised by somebody who has some destabilized mental health. Um, that was her way of coping, was like, "No, I could never lose you. That's too much for me to even bear with how hard my life's been." So, when we judge sevens, and I think the world is pretty harsh on sevens, do know that there's a story, just as they're storytellers, just as I just told you a story. There are deep stories underneath the painful things you see. You see them moving all over, not wanting to make plans. That's meaningful because they're trying to survive in their way. And I think that when you're more mature as a seven, you can make plans. I'm just going to put it out there for you sevens to challenge you if you feel like, yep, she said it, she validated it. I have wild frenetic energy. I can't be contained. You can be contained by yourself, maybe not by others fully, but you can give yourself some healthy containment. You can allow yourself to say, I'm safe. I have boundaries. I know what I can do if I need to switch modes, but I also know how to be reliable and dependable. And I've done that. I've walked that journey and continue to owning my business for 12 years. And before that, working 9 to 5s and going through undergrad, grad school, all kinds of things. You did too, whatever your particulars were, if you're a seven, whatever your spouse is. This is where we can get in trouble with overly stereotyping sevens as partiers and such, when many of us haven't been partiers since the very early years before we ever should have been partiers. So I think it's important that you allow yourself to say, how has my seven grown, or how have I grown as a seven? How can I approach that one order and consistency more? But also, how can I maintain my freedom that makes me feel like I can manage myself well with my boundaries? And before we move on to sevens with each type, I'll just let you know one way I've done that is I don't have to go running all the time anymore. Now, as you can hear, I have better just strength training sometimes than just running. Um, I often still use the gifts of seven with the exploration and the building of systems. I love that. That's my bread and butter of of life. I also feel like my parent part of me, I'm heading into Myers-Briggs just a little bit here, but it very much fits sevens, is knowing my own values has helped me to be healthily authentic with my people. When I have a decision to make and I have FOMO, what should I do? There's several options on the table. Um, Often I look to my values of compassion and look to see, does this fit with that? Does this feel compassionate? Does this feel like I'm included in that compassion too? But does it also include my family and my spouse? Does it look like healthy amounts of freedom where I'm not putting my freedom before that compassion? Does it look like I am allowing myself that exploration? How about kindness? How about love? Whatever your values are, I've shared a few of my most meaningful values. Those help me to center myself when in my regular seven mode, I might be more inclined to say, what else do I need to do to get things done? And when you put love out there for a value, you very much have to start considering, how do I show my family love? And if your answer is, I just work for them, then that's something you need to bring back to the table and figure out, what are the ways you can self soothe so that you can actually love them in the ways they love to be loved. I myself have found the 5 space so beautiful and focused, and I've loved writing many books in that space, but I've had to come back to the 7 because frankly, my spouse has a 7 arrow when he's healthy, and so he likes doing. And so I've had to live in my 7 more than I might want to sometimes, and there's been a lot of gifts to that. But I've also had to tell my spouse, hey, don't sabotage my work. Sometimes I need to go and be at peace and rest. And that's something he's learned over the years. So work these changes and shifts out with your spouse. But I'm so grateful for you as a 7 who knows how to be a problem solver, who knows how to, like I said, really notice differences in systems. Of course, I do this with couples, but to bring people together, to bring things together, systems of any kind, and to make them work together, that is your synthesizing gift. And so I hope you'll keep doing that. And also, I hope you know sevens deeply love bringing, as I said, joy and not disappointment. And so, as we talk about the types together, just know, guys, sometimes you as a 7 will need to sit in the feelings, even just for a few minutes. But it'll be okay if you keep these things in mind about how you're going to soothe, how you're going to come back, how you're going to get it organized, how you're going to bring some fun in. And it will be hard to sit with those feelings, but you will be able to do so as you take these deep breaths and allow yourself to say, it won't kill me to process my feelings, but it might hurt. And then I can move back into joy. Pain lasts for the night, but joy comes in the morning. One of my favorite scriptures. Okay, let's talk about sevens with each and every type. So you heard me give a little foreshadow about sevens and ones. And the reason I did that was that's my pairing, but I want to let all sevens and ones know you do have a lot of common threads, right? You have the one has aligned to 7, the 7 has aligned to 1, and you really often find that one of you parents the other in the same way the other one is the child, and the id and ego super ego sort of work in tandem with the 1 7 in that way. But I'd like you to focus more in on compassion together because there are such differences and you're both idealists. So that's important that you notice together that you can both have a very strong ideal for marriage. But when we look at one of the negativity biases of marriage studies at large, it's when you have too high of expectations for your marriage. And with both of you having that, it's important that you have conversations about that. Like, okay, this is the dream, but we can't be in the dream all the time. So, what are the ways we can practically love each other this week, this month, this year, and allow those to take place too and celebrate those as well? Just the stabilizing moments. And that's going to be hard. And I feel like I've talked a lot about that one today. So, I'm going to move on to 7 2. 7 2, the place where you really need to meet is your values because the 2 has such value for community giving, and the 7 has such value for safe experiencing and foraging out there. And so, for the 2 of you to be able to find some common threads where you can do both, it's very possible. And it's also very fun. I have a lot of 2 friends, and we merge really well when we're keeping all of that in mind, versus maybe the opposite can be when the 7 is stifling their upsetness and anger and just trying to people please because they're a positivity type. And so is the 2. And then the 2's like, yeah, yeah, whatever you want. And they're both upset. So, this is hard because you both, being so positive, don't necessarily like conflict, but it's really important to do it. And I want you to know you're worth it to be honest about what your values are and to say, let's talk that out practically. Sevens are very practical in that way and they want to plan. They even have a planning fixation that can go over the top. So at the end of the day, for the two of you to get those plans going and release them to God is very key. Um, Threes, similarly in that way that you'll both love making huge plans and you'll dream so big together. Literally, the sky's the limit. And I do this whenever I talk to my three sister. You've heard her on the pod a couple times, and it's just so fun to be able to get in that world. And she's like, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And it's always in the spirit of love. So keep that spirit of love, threes. Don't come at them harshly. And then sevens, make sure that you don't pick up all that your three throws out. When my sister or my hubby are in cahoots or on their own, kind of approaching me for more things, I know that that's them meaning well. And they're throwing me challenges. And here I am, this one person who's like a small business owner, part time homeschooler. And it's like I only have just a little bit to give, but I have my pieces that I love, like my coaching program and my clients and these pieces that are just so meaningful. And when they throw deeper, bigger challenges at you, if you're a seven, sometimes you just have to say, you know what? This is all I can handle right now. And that's always hard for all three of you to hear if you're with ones, threes, sevens, maybe eights, all four of you, all your friends who want big dreams for you. Just know that it's okay. And everyone there just needs a deep breath to say, okay, you know what? It's all right. Just do some things well, or you won't be able to do anything well. Now, coming into sevens and fours, there is that chemistry where the four really lets the seven sit with their feelings and gives permission and often identifies the feelings and really allows them to be loved for who they are, which, oh my gosh, you already heard me say a seven values authenticity so much. This is a very strong tie with fours, but they also can have such a discrepancy of how they process the emotions because the four is the slowest type on the Enneagram, and the seven is the quickest, along with eights are very quick too. And sometimes some of you are like, I'm this type, I'm a one and I'm fast. Like, I'm not trying to really get in a contest about it. But in terms of just even the kinetic movement of seven against that granular, taking every aesthetic in of four and every nuanced feeling, that takes time to develop. And there's gifts of each. But I really want you to know that sometimes there's a combustion in marriage when the two types are trying to do that. And there's a sense of needing to allow for the differences and just to take the deep breath and to note it, to say, we bring each other so much good, but there's also something deep and hard and raw about our connection that is very painful. And it's hitting some deep wounds. With the seven, it's going to hit your one critic. With the four, it's also going to hit your type one and even some of your two jealousy. And there's just such big feelings around the passion that these two types have around each other. So make sure you know you're totally normal if you have big feelings. And thankfully, this is a pairing that can talk those big feelings out either on their own or with a helper. Now, 7-5, a lot of synthesis, kinetic movement, a lot of just unique knowing of one another, even without words. Sometimes just a sense of, I get it. I'm a thinking type. We are tracking. Yet there's still a difference in that sevens are going to extrovert needs more, going to share dreams in a bigger, broader way that can be feeling exhausting to a five who also has big dreams, but has a different pacing and knows how to pull back, stop, pause at a wall, contemplate, relax. And a seven is more likely to hit a frustration, move on to the next thing. So you're very good for each other because obviously the seven is going to poke at the five, get them moving. And the seven's going to say, calm yourself. I'm sorry, the five's going to say, calm yourself. And now you allow yourself a deep breath and a pause and, set some boundaries with them, go into their withdrawing for a little while. And the seven kind of knocks at the door for a while and has to wait. And that's really good for both of them. It gives everybody time to think. And I know in marriage, you want your answer today, but the couples I've walked through this with know that there's something very special and worth the wait, but also worth the adventure because the seven reminds the five there's synergy and our connection. And so that's a gift that they bring to the five, even while the five helps the seven to walk through walls. It's beautiful. Okay, now the six with the seven. One more thinking type pairing that we see a lot in my office is the 7 6. And this is often because the six gets very practical and ends up doing a lot of the tasking in a marriage. And the seven, another great thinker, of course, has a lot of dreams, as we said, and then can be very playful because they're like, I'm busy. Now I need to go play. I have this desire to make sure I'm safe, and the six is making them feel safe because the six is like, I'm taking care of both of us and I'm outwardly caring for you. And the seven, maybe passively caring for the six, like, oh, I provide money. Maybe I do some of the chores too. And there may even be a sense of siblingness that can come into this bond where there's this teamship and a partnership, but the seven gets playful, the six gets a bit more serious or reactive, and there's not much romance happening unless you're very intentional. So that's what I want you to know is instead of being that combustion in the way of the 7 4 or the way of the 7 5, there's this practicality that can take over this bond and create a desire for the partners to desire other things outside of the marriage. So it's a really important pairing to say to yourselves, how are we keeping the romance going? We are too practical sometimes, and we get a lot done. We have a lot of fun, and there's a lot of discrepancy and banter, and that can actually be very sensual for your marriage. So, that part of the practicality, if you can make it a little spicy, can be really good where you're like, no, I want to do this, I want to do this. Make it spicy though, and allow yourselves to have that banter back, like you did when you might have been sarcastically flirting as a 6 and a 7. So bring that back in, you will be just fine, and bring your romance intentionally back in. 7 7, again, extremely practical, two thinking types. Can be a lot of id here, a lot of playfulness. I know when Wes and I get into our seven together, it's fun. In fact, he's in a seven mode right now. And we were just talking, my daughter and I was like, he's been in seven for a while. I've just been kind of enjoying it. Like, it can't go on forever, but I'm just watching it and enjoying it. And that is something I want you to do if you're an actual 7 7 pairing, is to watch it and enjoy it when you're both in a seven. But remember, the Enneagram is a system that we allow ourselves to see so that we can become compassionate, understand our weaknesses, our strengths, and also become more expansive. So I want you to look at your 6 wing and your 8 wing to see what those can do to support you. I want you to look over at your arrows to see what those can do to support you. And you might say, I'm in my 5 today, I'm in my 1. You guys might even say, oh my gosh, no, I am reaching all the way to feelings. So that is a deep dive for me. And I would love to invite you into that when you're ready. But again, remember, freedom is very important. So not forcing your 7 to follow you into all your wings arrow work, but just to focus in on being expansive so you guys hit more layers and deeper dive so that you can have a balance, not just joy all the time. And we all know what goes up must come down. So, learning how to work with your aggression through self soothing, like I talked about at the beginning of the episode. Okay, now 7 and 8 are a couple that's in motion and really has a hard time slowing down. There's so much big, beautiful energy here that it's actually enviable. And I love to see a 7 and an 8 moving together dynamically. I love hanging with my eights. We talk nonstop and we keep going. We push into each other's conversations with love, with laughter, with joy, with little bits of radical anger and, in that injustice way for each other. And then we're tired afterwards, right? And so you have to, both of you having a relationship to the 5, really allow yourself back to rest and to then regroup and to say, okay, that was fun. What can we do to make sure we have our restful rhythms in? Because we're probably going to bounce back pretty big. And then both of you just need to feel comfortable enough, and it takes some vulnerability, but to say, like, let's have some special fun dates so we can do that really big energy after the honeymoon is over. But also, let's just be vulnerable enough to be in our 5 spaces a lot where we just allow ourselves to be focused and do our work and rest. And maybe sometimes we can't just be spontaneous and we need to plan a date or it won't happen because we're in our dreams and in our big work. And so that's very key. Also, if you're feeling that rub of jealousy about each other's careers or amounts of times with kids, you guys can also just be diplomatic and say, you know what, let me support you on this one. You support me on this one. And we don't have to be on every project together. So give yourselves little space, also some good boundaries, because being both very passionate types, you're going to want to make sure you spend time with people who aren't just seriously attractive to you. If it's not each other, that can be very threatening to this pairing. So make sure you allow yourself to create healthy boundaries for your marriage marriage. So you don't have to add on worlds of stress beyond the normal stresses of life. Instead, just save extra time to carve out for you two to have fun. Now, last but not least, sevens with nines are a very chill couple, yet joyful. And so the nine is bringing the seven so much peace, so much resoluteness, so much strong oak, sort of that body type behavior where you're just like, oh, I'm just with somebody who knows how to be still, who knows how to hold harmony, who knows how to be strong and is strong, versus sometimes that thinking type feels like all over the place. And so it's really beautiful to have that bond, but yet you don't want to just lay all your frenetic energy at the feet of your nine. You also want to provide them inspiration, joy, and also a measured amount of those things. Because if you come at your nine with full throttle energy, they will be overwhelmed in most cases. Now, often I come with coffee, so my nine is extremely happy to see me, or a promise of coffee. Would you like to wake up? I will take you to get coffee. Or we have an espresso maker now. I will make you coffee. Or would you like to make coffee with the special supplies that I got you? Kind of finding your way to energy for the nine is big if you're in a relationship with a nine, but also respecting when they need their downtime. Now, it happens to me, I'm in my five a lot. So when my nine and I hang out, maybe this is you also if you're with a nine, we end up really doing well with that. We're like, we want to watch a show together that we love, but also, yeah, you're going to be over here doing your thing. I'm going to do mine. So I think that the nine really does level the seven out and give them permission to go away. However, if you're that social seven who hasn't learned that yet, there's going to just be a need for a lot of deep breaths and a lot of time for you to actually allow yourself some different ways of self soothing versus just asking the nine to hold everything for you. That just pains me to think of them having to do all your emotional holding. So allow yourself to remember one thing before we close with the 7 9, and that is nines are also positivity types. So don't discharge all of your frustration onto them. They also want to keep it fairly light. So allow yourselves, again, a few minutes, just like I said for seven in general, give a few minutes to digest painful experiences together, but allow yourself to know we have our prayer lives for that. We have other friends too that are healthy friendships where we can do that. And then let's allow ourselves some coming back to our joyful or restful spaces. But you need the hard talks too. So keep having them, even if you just surround them with a fun weekly meeting. And yeah, that's my reminder for you with your beautiful joy and peace. Now, all of us, as we wrap up today, who have a seven or are a seven or with a seven, I'm just grateful for you. Thank you for bringing your joy to others. Please know that I am learning with you and we are allowed to rest, that it is okay to share the load with people who are safe, and finding them and refining them is very key. And knowing they sometimes shift across seasons is okay too. FOMO is real, but you don't have to let it guide you. Just allow yourself to come into that space of knowing that you can be solid, that you can be dependable, that you can get a lot done. Don't let yourself hold on to just these quick assessments of a seven that don't lend themselves to the fullness and richness of who you are and how you've become who you are. And if you would like more information to deep dive through all the pairings and treatment plans for all the pairings in every stage of marriage, do not forget to get my book, The Enneagram in Marriage, Your Guide to Thriving Together in Your Unique Pairing. It was on sale last week. I hope it still is at Amazon, a half off sale, just like my products at enneagramandmarriage.com right now with the code Summer Fun. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we love you sevens and all of the supporters of sevens. We love you too. Thank you so much for being here. Bye-bye.